Anytime you want to raise money from other people, you do need to think about securities law. So I'm going to talk about it using the example of a group of squirrels that want to start a squirrel-owned acorn smoothie business. And you're probably wondering, well, why squirrels? It's because, well, squirrels are cute, and we're talking about securities law, which if you haven't heard of securities law, you're probably thinking, well, I could take my nap now. Or if you have heard of securities law, you're probably thinking about Wall Street and anyway, in any case, but it is something that applies to everyone, even if you are the 99%. And so in the spirit of community, these squirrels, they do need to raise extra money because they really have to get a very expensive blender. So they're thinking maybe we can get other animals in the forest to loan money or maybe even invest and get a small return. So the first thing you need to know about a security, is what is a security? Basically, it's any time you're asking somebody to put money into your enterprise and you're offering them the expectation of a return. So securities laws are meant to protect the investors from losing that money, basically. Second thing you need to know is that even asking people to invest in your business, just asking them, could be against the law. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, as played by the bear, or state securities regulators could bust you for that. So yeah, it unfortunately makes it a little hard to raise money from your local moose, bird, squirrel, etc. So third thing to know is that you can raise money if the money you're asking for is not a security. So here are a couple things that are not securities. Well, donations are not securities. And I think you'd be surprised at how many people would be willing to donate to an awesome cooperative business. Like if I were rich, I would donate to all of your cooperative businesses. But, so yeah, and the donation doesn't offer the expectation of return. So it's not security. Another thing that's not a security is when you put money into your own business. And if you're a group of people or squirrels putting money into your own business where you are all going to be collectively managing and collectively earning that money, then that is also not a security. So these three squirrels are fine. Now, if they were a very large cooperative, it would be a little iffy because arguably if it's really large, each squirrel doesn't really play a stronger role in managing the business, but it's a gray area. So those are two examples of things that are not securities. Fourth thing to know is that there are a couple interesting ways to raise money that might be securities. So Kristen talked about pre-selling, and so let's say these squirrels get some money. In exchange, they offer a gift certificate for 300 acorn smoothies. Well, under California law, because California law is really strict about this, anytime you put your money into anything and there's a risk that you're not going to get what you're expecting, in this case, they're expecting smoothies, that could be considered a security. But if the risk is low, so let's say it's the landscaping cooperative, and instead of selling smoothies or pre-selling smoothies, they're pre-selling hours of gardening time. Now, there's not a lot of risk here because they are ready to start gardening anytime. It's like they're able-bodied, they're ready, and they go for it. So I would say that probably that kind of pre-selling would not be considered a security. And bartering is interesting too. I mean, bartering is really not that different. I mean, if you find a beaver with a blender, you might as well just give that beaver a gift certificate as well. And securities regulators are kind of like, they don't tend to notice unless there's money involved. So, but that doesn't mean that this is not a security. It just means that no one's ever really been called out on doing something like that. So, fifth thing to know, sometimes you're still going to need money. Even, the pre-selling and donations and everything might not be enough. So there are a few things called exemptions to securities law, which basically make it much easier to raise money without doing a lot of registration and jumping through a lot of legal hoops. So here are three exemptions that are particularly relevant, I think, to small-scale cooperatives. One is an exemption that's just for cooperatives. So it's called 25100R, and you could use these numbers and sound like a lawyer. But basically what it means is that a cooperative could get up to $300 from every member. And that won't be considered a security. So up to $300. And that might be useful if you have a really large cooperative. And if every squirrel can't put in a large amount, they could at least put in 300. Another exemption, this is one that's just very commonly used by all kinds of businesses, is 25102F. And so what that is basically, it's an exemption that allows you to get investments from up to 35 people, as long as these are people with pre-existing relationships with you, personal relationships or business relationships, enough that they kind of know your business savvy, they know your financial savvy, they know the status of your business. So it could be like 5 of your closest squirrel friends, or people who have been sort of working with your business a little bit. And the 25102F exemption also lets you get investments from people who have financial advisors, or they have enough investing experience that they could protect themselves. It's kind of a gray area what that means, but that's what the law says. So you can kind of, up to 35 investors, as long as they're in California, as long as your business is formed in California, as long as you're doing most of your business in California, you can use this exemption. And you really just need to file a pretty simple form with the Department of Corporations. And so there's a lot of detail about this in the handbook too, if you're not catching everything. A third exemption is when you get investments from really rich people. Now it's kind of ironic. Rich people can go invest wherever they want. The rest of us have to only invest in Wall Street, which is kind of silly. But yeah, if somebody has more than $1 million in net worth, not counting their home, or if they get over $200,000 of income every year, then they're called an accredited investor. And so you can get money from accredited investors without having to jump through a lot of legal hoops. And it might not be ideal. I think for a cooperative, this is going to be somewhat unusual because most rich investors are thinking they want a return. They might want control over a business. And if you're a cooperative, you're not going to be offering them a huge return, if any, and you're not going to be giving them a whole large share of control. But maybe if you offer them a lot of tuna fish smoothies, they might go for it. So I don't know. There's more progressive investors out there, so it's not out of the question. Sixth thing to know, if you can't get a good exemption, if you still can't raise money using all of this, there is something called a direct public offering. And basically what a direct public offering means is that you have jumped through all of the securities hoops. Usually it means registering with the state, doing all these disclosures, all these financial audits, and then the state Department of Corporations looks at it and decides, okay, that looks good enough. It takes a while, it costs a lot of money, you'll probably need a lawyer. But there is a worker co-op in New York that just did this, Workers Diner. So now it's going to be worker owned, but in order to raise money, they're also going to be able to get money from us. Like Jenny Casson is a local attorney here in Oakland, the co-founder of the Sustainable Economies Law Center. And she is the attorney who helped them do this. So she emailed the other day and said, Sushil, Janelle, get out your wallets. So we could all invest, and that's a really cool thing. And then the business opens and is successful. So that's securities law in a nutshell. All right, so now I need to ask for some volunteers. So now I'm going to talk about how money flows through the cooperative, which is also what makes a cooperative so unique and so different from other businesses. And I was going to have you all, like 3 of you, hold the jars so that people can see. So this is, okay, it's going to take a lot of coordination. So that's perfect. All right, what's next? So the role of money in this demonstration will be played by chocolate. I'm sorry it's not fair trade cooperative chocolate, but it's good chocolate, I found out. So for the sake of keeping this easy, I'm going to use the example of a cooperative that only has 2 members, so it's going to keep the numbers a little bit easier. And so it's a green landscaping cooperative, and 2 people named Amy and Bernardo are going to start this cooperative. Now these people standing here, they're just props. They're not people. So that's not Amy and that's not Bernardo, unfortunately. Sorry, you guys. They're just holding the jars so you can see the jars. So what's up?
I'm saying, how about moose, squirrel, and what's my...
Oh, moose and squirrel. Good idea. So actually, I'm going to have like some involuntary volunteers from the audience to be Amy and Bernardo. Do you mind being Amy? I'm just going to be handing you chocolate. That's okay. And do you mind being Bernardo? You just have to sit there and take chocolate and share it with people around you. So, all right, I'm just...
Don't forget the microphone.
Yeah, all right, I'll try to stand by the mic. So we have 3 jars. Now these jars are the accounts of the cooperative. They're not actually 3 separate bank accounts. They're basically just 3 different numbers that are kept in the ledgers of the cooperative that basically indicate whose money, which money is whose. So Amy and Bernardo each have their own member collective accounts, member capital accounts. And to start their cooperative, what each of them is going to do is put in about $10,000. Yeah. So there's $10,000. Sorry. So this is the money that's going to get their business started. Now, it's actually still their money. It's in the cooperative, but the fact that it's in their capital accounts means it's theirs. They just can't get it at the moment. So they start working. They have their first job. They start raking in a little money. This money for now is going to just go into the cooperative account. But pretty soon after they start, they realize, oh gosh, we need to hire somebody. So they hire Carla, who, do you mind being Carla today? Yeah. You don't have to do anything, I swear. Just take chocolate. So Carla is actually not going to be a member yet because maybe they want to wait and make sure she's cool or whatever. So for now, she's going to be an employee and get paid regular wages. So, all right. So they're going to have oh yeah, sorry. There's Carla. Okay. If you can move just a tiny bit to the side, thanks. All right, so their first year is great. They earn so much money. They gross $150,000. Now, this is not profit because actually they do have a lot of expenses, like they have to pay the insurer, they have to pay the landlord for their space, they have to pay
Carla.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, Carla's wages. Oh, they have to buy supplies. So, actually, you worked hard. And Amy and Bernardo are basically treating themselves like employees. So, they are going to be paying themselves wages. So they're getting money on a regular basis. And, sorry. All right, so that wasn't all profit. This is profit. This is what's left after they've paid all their expenses. Not bad. I mean, it's $45,000. So, now what happens with this $45,000? This is where it's a little bit different from a regular business, because if it were a regular business, where's the boss? Well, I mean, the boss, it would go to the shareholders. It would just, buy money, but this is a cooperative business. It's a worker-owned co-op. So the first thing they need to do is figure out which of this money was earned by the members of the cooperative. So, this is another thing that makes cooperatives unique, and it's also part of their tax status, is that if they distribute the money back to the worker owners on the basis of how much each of those worker owners contributed, that means they're distributing it on a cooperative basis, and that money's not going to be taxed at the corporate level. So we have to figure out, well, how much of this money was earned by the non-member, Carla? And we figured that out with hours. So it looks like Carla put in 1,500 hours, and Amy and Bernardo, between the two of them, put in 3,000 hours. So Carla basically earned a third of this money. Now, she's not a member, so she's not going to get it. Where a third of this money is going to go, it's going to go into the cooperative account. And because that money is going to stay in the cooperative, it's not going to be taxed on a cooperative basis. It's going to be taxed like regular corporations. So actually, I got to give some of this to Uncle Sam. So that's like a disadvantage to having non-member employees is the portion of the earnings that they earn is going to be taxed. Okay, so now we've put that money in the co-op account, paid a little taxes. We still have $30,000 left, and we have to distribute it to Amy and Bernardo. And here's the other thing that's interesting about co-ops. It's going to be based on how much each of them worked. It's not based on how much money they each put in, because they each put in equal amounts. But Bernardo actually worked harder. And Amy didn't work as many hours because she likes to stay home and bake a lot. So, yeah, so that's what's up with Amy. So it looks like, I missed a slide, but yeah, so we put money on the cooperative account, paid taxes. Okay, now we have that 30,000. We have to figure out who gets what. Bernardo, who put in 1,800 hours, is going to get 18,000. So here's Bernardo's, here's Amy's. Am I going to give this money straight to them yet? Actually, no, because a lot of times cooperatives are going to want to keep that money in to use it for the next year. And so what they've decided to do in this particular co-op's case is to give half of the cash out and keep half the cash in the cooperative account. So I'm going to put in a little bit into Amy's account, about half of Bernardo's account of his money, and then actually distribute the cash to Amy and Bernardo. So, and actually that should have been gone, but all right, so we either distributed it out in cash or we allocated it to their member accounts. And the interesting thing is, actually, before you give all that money away, you are going to need to pay taxes on that amount, not only that you just received in chocolate, but the stuff that's still sitting in your account. So what you're going to get from the cooperative is something called a written notice of allocation, which says, Bernardo, you've earned money, but the cooperative is keeping it now. So you're going to get this piece of paper. Amy, you've earned money, but the cooperative is keeping it. But it's your money. You have to pay taxes on it. So you got $18,000. Even though you didn't get it all, you need to pay taxes on the whole thing. The cool thing is later on when you get it, you're not going to have to pay taxes on it. So that's cool. Yep. Oh yeah, so give a little money to the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board when you think of it, because that is your taxable income. So what happens next? One thing I should note about that money you're going to give to the IRS is they are still scratching their heads over how it's going to be taxed, and I guess Bali mentioned this, that the IRS is like, wait a minute, is this self-employment income? Is this employment income? Is this a corporate dividend? And most cooperatives have been treating it like it's a dividend, which means that it gets taxed at a lower rate. But I think it's possible the IRS is going to come back sometime in the next few years when they finally understand cooperatives. They might say that you need to pay employment taxes on it. So what about all this money in their accounts? It's like sitting there, it's their money. Well, usually what a cooperative will do, and it'll say in their bylaws what they plan to do with it, is plan to just pay it out over time when they can to the individuals. Remember, the money is not going to be taxed again, so I don't think I could fit my hand in there. But, so a little bit over the next few years is going to be distributed back to the worker owners. And of course, over time, they're going to be earning more. It's going to keep getting replenished and paid out, replenished and paid out. And then what happens? Well, what happens if one cooperative decides, like, her real calling is as a pastry chef? So she's going to quit, and she's going to start her own new bakery. So what does she get when she leaves, first of all? Well, she's going to get all the money in her cooperative, she's all going to get all the money in her capital account because that's her money. And this is where a cooperative is different from a regular business, because most regular businesses would say, all right, now we've got to appraise the business, see how much it's worth, see what your share is, and then we'll probably have to take out loans and buy out your share, and you'll get like a huge payout. But cooperatives tend to limit people's equity in the business by saying you're just going to get your account. So it's going to be hard for some businesses to pay the full amount immediately. They can't pull that cash out. So they're basically going to give Amy, when she leaves, a promissory note that says, we promise we're going to give you your money, but not now. So there you go. And then they might say, in this case, the bylaws say, over the period of 5 years, we'll give you your money. So 5 years passes. There you go. And with interest, I would add a little bit of interest in there since you waited 5 years for that. There you go. Okay, one other interesting thing about cooperatives and how they work is that So what if the business dissolves? Or what if some rich company says, we want to buy your business, we're going to give you $1 million for it. And let's say it's 10 years from now and there's like maybe 10 members in the cooperative. They might be going, yeah, let's all get $100,000 and then we'll like buy a condo in the city and yeah, let's sell out. Well, we don't want worker cooperatives to do that because first of all, we won't have our worker co-op anymore. We won't have a worker-owned business providing livelihoods to the community. And it's also not fair based on how the cooperative was structured, that when Amy left, she didn't get a big payout. Why should the current members get a big payout? So what most cooperative bylaws will say is that if the business is ever dissolved and its assets are sold, or if the whole business is sold and there's a payout, every current member and past member is going to get a payout based on how long they worked for the business or the value of their contribution to the business. So Amy, like 10 years later, you're going to get more money. And that's great because it's based on the cooperative principle of rewarding people for their actual contribution and not just the fact that they're lucky to be there when the business gets sold or the fact that they're lucky to put in a lot of capital when it started. So as you can see, that's the way money flows through a cooperative, and that's sort of the intent. It's not trying to make rich people richer, but basically enrich all of the people who are actually contributing. So that's what I love about cooperatives. That's one of the things.